about is the face of the abuser. Okay. And the reason why I wanted to talk about that, because I've had girlfriends and friends in that situation. I remember being a child, and the lady who lived across the street from us, I remember her husband killing her in a bathtub. He scalded her to death. And I remember, our mom trying to protect us from knowing what it was, but it was what it was. I remember having a neighbor upstairs who every night her husband used to mop her from one end to the other. But every time the police came out, she said, nothing. And when you seen this guy, he was like, he had to have a Napoleon complex because he won't the biggest thing, you know what I'm saying, in the world. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about in recognizing domestic violence is it starts with the romance. Mm-hmm. Okay, it always starts with the romance. Most abusers, whether they're men or female, are very romantic, very attentive, very a charmer in the beginning. Then it starts with the isolation. Okay, your family don't like me. Your girlfriends don't like me. Your friend, your boys don't want me around.
Why do you have to call this
Why
person?
you have to call this person? They have to keep you isolated. Once we got you isolated, now I got you. Then they introduce the threat. And what I mean by the introduction of the threat, if you don't do what I tell you, but I'm not going to hit you. Oh, I don't know. That's the introduction of the threat. And once they introduce that threat, they're waiting to see what your reaction is. Now, for me, you threaten Silk and you ball up your fist, we're going to have a problem. But if you don't respond and you take that, now I know I got you.
Now, let me ask you something. And the curious thought, and I was talking with another person on. Look at some of the shows, especially that we grew up with, the generation we show again. Look at Good Times, Sanford or Son, or just even Honeymooners before. What it was one of the things, I'm going to get you Alice, and he raised his hand, or the Jeffersons, how many times he had to feel like he could be boss over, but we saw the maid and the wife emasculating George, or we see, all these different shows. Just subconsciously, granted with laugh and jokes and giggles, but subconsciously, how much did that play into the role of today?
Right.
And then because, do we see anybody, how many women think that it's cool that really love 227 or something? Sure.
Thank you for calling the show. Go ahead, caller. You on the air. You got a question or a comment?
Yeah, I have a comment.
Okay.
I think one of the problems we have with people who do domestic violence, we have a nation of angry, not just black men, but a lot of sisters out here angry. Mm-hmm. I came up from a different time. I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and it's a coldness. A lot of these young boys brought up, they didn't have mothers, fathers, and they got a lot of anger. But they're good in sports. But when you make that $1 million contract,
yes,
they still have that anger.
Yes.
So their daddy left them, and they're angry about that, and they got unresolved issues.
Agreed. I definitely agree, caller. And we thank you so much for calling. We're going to talk about that. And if you hear something else, please, thank you for listening and give us a call back, okay?
May I ask you a question?
Can we, Stephen would like to ask you a question.
Okay.
Sir, you said you grew up in the 40s, 50s, and 60s.
No, I grew up in the 50s. I was born in 51.
Okay, sir, we're back. If you don't mind me asking, are you a military vet, sir?
Yeah.
Okay, would you say...
Vietnam.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for your time and service. But question, would you say that the military helped fuel your anger or fuel the anger that you saw in other young men and women, men in the military at that time? Did you see that there was any help or training? Because one of the major complaints that we saw...
Well, back when we came from the service, they didn't really give us any counseling. I had to do that on my own. Vietnam guys would just let off and thrown out there.
Exactly.
But we didn't have perfect fathers neither.
Right.
My father had a rough side to him. He stopped later on, and I didn't want to be like that.
Okay.
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 And but now let me just say, I did something like that, but I went and got some counseling.
Okay, and that's what matters, and that's what matters, and that's what I'm going to talk about next. So thank you again for
Thank
calling
you.
Okay.
in, asking our questions, answering our questions, and asking your questions, and being a fan of the show. Okay,
Okay.
thank
Thanks.
you, sir. And I wanted to talk about that because he raised a valid point. There is a lot of angry people. We've seen that with Ferguson. But the one thing that he said is he went out and got help. We all are angry. We're angry when waking up in the morning, going to work. And he's 100% right. I've talked about this time and time again, that we have these young men that they work hard and give them these $1 million contracts, and they promise them the world, but they don't get to the surface of things or whatever. These are not Ray Rice situation and all of them. Those are manifestations of behavior that was already in them. And if you don't recognize that, the one thing that gentleman said, money cannot buy you love or
It
happiness.
should be mandatory, and I know people say, don't tell me what to do with money, but I'm sorry. When it comes to the situation, and I'm not trying to assume, because there are a lot of, I don't want to cast every NFL player or every single athlete, because to be truthful, majority of them are wonderful men, majority people, and then it hurts that majority of great people, and it hurts that you see all these wonderful organizations that they do, but they're not getting the attention and recognition. They only get it is if they did something bad and they were part of the organization, so the organization lose money. What we need to focus on is the solution, and then